What's up, people? As always, I'm QB, keeping y'all locked in to Culturalist Theory. Today, we're taking a look at the studio albums of one of the most impactful and underrated artists of the 21st century. Remember, these are studio albums, so that on top of the covers, not gonna fly on this list. You're either new to this or true to this. Either way, we wanna see you hit that like button, subscribe, and comment on the list, starting with number 6, One Up. Peaking at number 115 on the Billboard 200, Payne's numbers look more like an aging role player than a former MVP who took the league by storm. Is Russell Westbrook a wild comparison? Tallahassee native's most recent studio LP fails to hook audiences with the personality and impact he had in the mid-2000s. A head-scratching team of collabs including Lil Wayne, Tory Lanez, Boosie, Russ, and OT Genesis leave us with one question. Whose album is this? In all my professional years listening to Teddy, I never thought once that him and Boosie needed to share a studio space. From the artwork to the album's random assortment of material, this one just feels like a lazy effort plagued by a creative dry spell. That's probably too harsh. We promise we only go this hard on artists who have proven they can exceed our expectations. We still got some enjoyment from tracks like You Up, Keep This From Me, and Here It Comes. But we knew something was off when we had to question whether this T-Pain and Wayne collab was a hit or a miss. That duo is supposed to be automatic from the line. There are other songs that have that undeniable T-Pain charisma sprinkled throughout, but there are few and far between. There's some skips on here that felt like muscle memory. It's My Dog Birthday, We All We Got, and All I Want come to mind. While a song like A Million Times feels exciting until we get to that pseudo dubstep chorus. With no clear direction, be it production or subject material, Payne is left sounding like a shell of his former self. Again, just comparing this output to his mid-late 2000s. We know artists need to change, but can this direction be viewed as anything other than counterproductive? Who do we want to hear on a 2020s T-Pain album? Why not link back up with producers who had a heavy hand in his sound on projects like Epiphany and 3 Rings? Oh wait, that was him. You might be asking who worked on One Up, and we can tell you who it wasn't. Well, looking at all his most beloved work, he's the only common denominator. We don't know if it's outside producers not understanding his skill set or vice versa. But Payne, can you just go back to producing? We sure you would have hooked up Goat Talk better than Bishop Jones, respectfully. Speaking on the album's title and meaning, Payne, whose real name is Fahim Najim, spoke on being an avid gamer. We appreciate getting to see a different side of who he is as a person. Fingers crossed, we get to see a different side of his production as well. Number 5, Revolver. Playing on people's ability to be deceived or misled, Revolver was meant to contrast Payne's evolution with your mind's tendency to focus on one dimension of a multi-dimensional concept. That sounds good on paper until you get to the execution of the project and feel like you're seeing his revolution turning into regression. Dropping 6 years to the day from his debut studio album, Revolver would ultimately play out like Payne's last bow in the spotlight, receiving average scores from critics. The album would debut at number 28, selling 35,000 copies in its first week. And if we're being honest, the first criticism that came to mind with this project has to do with its shelf life. If Payne is a Superman in his own world, then Pitbull has to be Lex Luthor, right? I mean, auto-tuned Latin club music doesn't sound appealing in 2011. Now hearing it 12 years later, let's just say this collab was truly a product of his environment. Additional features would include Weezy F Baby, and the F is for the first line, Wiz Khalifa, Chris Brown, and Neo. Who would have thought we would be saying Khalifa's verse held up the best? Again, the majority of our issue with this record lies in production. Payne was visionary while a lot of these DJs were reactionary. Initially intended to come out back in 2010, but he would reschedule the release date to show his displeasure with sales. He then began to hold the record hostage, telling fans they needed to get both his follower count and his album sales up before they could have any hope of hearing the project. Is it too late to move this one to number 7? Teddy would also announce plans to roll back on the features, saying 3 Rings felt like a DJ Khaled album due to the abundance of artists working on the project. We'll get into that more in a little bit. Best Love Song, his joint collab with C Breezy, would enjoy modest success, peaking at number 33, before dropping what we would call his last classic track, 5 O'Clock. That one would peak at number 10, while also charting globally. After Hove's onslaught aimed at Payne's weapon of choice, auto-tune, the rapper turned singer would unfortunately decide to double down on his oversaturation, losing the personality that got his music off the ground in the first place. We'll give it the nod for impact when determining what should be sitting at the bottom of the list, but in terms of quality, it's difficult to say he put out an entire body of work more stale and lackluster than Revolver. We didn't even mention Mixed Girl. Yeah, that one was doomed to fail from the gate. Payne's team up with Wiz wasn't the only song we would revisit from the album. Showtime, Rock Bottom, and Drowning Again remind listeners that something productive came out of those studio sessions. The difference between One Up and Revolver has to be 5 O'Clock and Showtime. Amazing what 2 songs can do for the quality of an entire track list. But who'd have predicted Wiz and Payne would have such irreplaceable chemistry? Theorists, let us know down in the comments if you would welcome more music from the pair. Number 4, Oblivion. Preceded by a 6-year silence between releases, Oblivion sounds like the most fun Payne has had on a project since 3 Rings. Normally, we wouldn't consider a 1-album gap to be a significant marker. This is roughly 9 years in real time though. Per the T-Pain trend chart, Oblivion gets off to a sluggish start, not fully getting his legs under him until track 11, Your Friend. The album would reward loyal Payne listeners with the hidden gems like CC from DC, Too Fine, and May I, salvaging a rather confused collection of unrelated material. Have guilty pleasure, have unexplored artistic growth. The experimental nature of the album would also lead to one of his most surprising songs. Usually these lists are only covering standard cuts of the quality album, but we've got to show love to T-Pain mashup. Easily the best medley of greatest hits we didn't know we needed. The Florida-born singer enjoys minimal accompanying production with no auto-tune assistance. Speaking of minimal arrangements and vocal gymnastics, if you haven't already, be sure to check out Payne's Tiny Desk performance. Dre Moon and Payne would certainly find the best blend of his sound since his earliest works. While we wouldn't go as far as one critic who described the album as a migraine struggling to maintain an erection, whatever that means, we do agree that seemingly all of the qualities that lead to Payne's most recognizable songs, including Bartender, I'm Sprung, and Can't Believe It, are nowhere to be found in this 2017 LP. His final album under Akon's Convict Music label, the Nappy Boy spokesman would ultimately send his listeners to a bit of their own trying to get through this album. We're not saying we have all the answers to Payne's problems, but there are a few things we would have tried differently. Throwing CB on Your Friend for starters, the latter matched Brown's MO more closely around the album's release and probably would have saved both songs from their relative obscurity. That Show Me What You Got sample flip on That's How It Go would have played out differently too, with our version resembling the original with a slight R&B twist, just taking some drums out while maybe adding a couple backing vocals. Nothing major, you know, the little personal touches that these heavily layered shots in the dark are lacking. Good news is, we're finally getting to material that had us excited for this ranking in the first place. Number 3, rapper turned singer. Payne's 05 debut was really something out of left field. With our only real exposure to auto-tune coming from Zapp and Rogers' Computer Love, Teddy turned an accessory into a centerpiece. Tracks like I'm Sprung, Real Good Music, and I'm in Love effortlessly brought listeners in on the ground floor without the realization of what they were hearing, with his influence directly influencing everyone from Kanye and Hov to Travis Scott and Future. At his peak, we think a better comparison would have been Steph Curry. Everyone said that you couldn't win championships off three-point shooting, the same way you couldn't make classics with auto-tune. The tools used would become so prolific that entire careers were formed around his implementation. Artists like Sway Lee, Quavo, Post Malone, and Roddy Ricch would lean on its use like a crutch. Rapper turned singer would sell just under 50K in his first week. Despite its 2 top 10 singles, the album would fail to crack a top 25 spot on the charts. Good news is, the project will receive mostly positive reviews from critics who praise Payne's authenticity and creativity in branching out. With a few high-profile features, namely Akon, Mike Jones, and Trick Daddy, Payne's eager 74-minute debut avoided feeling so prolonged by incorporating subtle production and focusing on crisp songwriting. Tracks like My Place, Blow Your Mind, and Ridge Road made us forget that the majority of the album's 19 songs didn't survive the re-listen. You Got Me to Bartender has to be a record turnaround for a duo, right? You Got Me is far from a bad track, but it definitely catered to Akon's sound more, which is why we feel it failed to have an impact similar to Bartender, going from little to no replay value to one of the most recognizable songs of the decade. That largely represents our view and the difference between the two respective albums. Remixes to Studio Love featuring Wayne and Dance Floor featuring Pitbull are out there circulating on YouTube. We get an uncharacteristically forgettable collab from the T-Wayne combo though, making us glad that the original made its way to the final cut. I don't think we need to revisit that Pitbull remix though. Mr. Worldwide has his fan base for sure, they just didn't align with Teddy Payne's at all. Despite the success of I'm Sprung and I'm in Love, Payne wouldn't get any recognition from the Academy. Can't even say we're surprised. Can you believe this one still hasn't been platinum certified? Number 2, 3 Rings. There comes a project in every great catalog that truly epitomizes a person's artistry, vision, and execution in a way even the artist couldn't have predicted. We're not saying Payne has a great catalog, but this is certainly that synergistic project. As a consistent, conceptually executed album, we'd call this Teddy's best body of work. Don't worry, the criteria to rank these albums serve as a form of checks and balances. But make no mistake, our favorite era of Payne creativity had to be Ringleader Teddy. Can't Believe It, Reality Show, and Chopped and Screwed still sound as innovative and ahead of their time 15 years later. The video for some of these joints are crazy in their own right. Whoever edited them transitions and Can't Believe It didn't get paid enough. While those over-the-top, hallucinated visuals might have been sensory overload for some, we see it as perfectly symbolic of the incomprehensible strides Payne was making with autotune. All the features played their parts faithfully. Luda, Sierra, Breezy, Akon, and T.I. This whole time we've died on the hill behind Wayne's verse on Can't Believe It. While we can't rap it word for word, that just makes it clear he wasn't really bringing that T-Wayne energy we get on Got Money. Reality Show's star-studded cast of accompanying vocalists served as an R&B cipher of sorts. While most 20-song track lists can usually benefit from budget cuts, there weren't too many dead weight fillers. Long Lap Dance, Ringleader Man, and Freeze snuck into rotation on that last re-listen. 3 Rings would also secure Payne's last Grammy nomination, ultimately losing out in Best Contemporary R&B Album to Beyonce's I Am Sasha Fierce. The album's number 4 debut would also be Payne's second and last album to peak within the top 5. In our 20+ years of listening to music, we never heard anything about a Can't Believe It remix featuring Justin Timberlake. JT using auto-tune over a perfectly good 3 Stacks or Pharrell beat? Don't look at us like that. Those remixes made more sense than Payne and Timberlake. Why do we keep digging deeper into this? Apparently Trey Songz and JoJo also covered this one. We don't know what's worse, the fact JoJo touched the song or that we listened to it. The OG version would debut at number 29, making it his highest debut at the time. After the song crept its way up to number 7, Payne notched his 5th top 10 hit. You know where 2 others came from, the number 1 spot on this list. Number 1, Epiphany. If we're looking at the intersection of popularity and impact, this is definitely peak Teddy. There was a bit of consideration put into this #1 spot, not as cut and dry of a decision as we thought it would be. Then we stepped back and said, what would make it his best work? Well, for starters, it was his only album to go #1, selling 171K copies in his first week. Buy You a Drink with Young Jock would top the Hot 100. He would also grab a chart-topping feature on Chris Brown's Kiss Kiss later that year. Almost forgot about that Good Life. Yeah, he couldn't miss an 07. Okay, so while not all of those points are related to Epiphany, we would be remiss if we failed to mention his impact on the industry then. Bartender would be our pick for the album's best, but Time Machine certainly has the most underrated on lock. The guitar build-up, uniquely immersive storytelling, and concept turned Time Machine into a time capsule. Stringing together B-side after B-side, songs like Show You How, Tipsy, and 69 sound like breadcrumbs leading back to one of 2000's most creative and memorable projects on wax. If we're being honest, there's still portions of this material that haven't aged too well, including Tipsy. Obviously, the brow-raising lyrics haven't helped, but he needed lane departure on, with Payne swerving all in Nelly's lane with these melodies. He grabbed a Best R&B Performance nomination for Bartender and 2 nominations for Best Rap Sung Collaboration, with Kiss Kiss and Good Life each being nominated. Ultimately, Good Life would win Payne a Grammy for Best Rap Song. Isn't it interesting how the man who dominated R&B in 07 could only walk away with an award for rap music? Come on, Academy. We gotta do better than that. The album would receive mixed reviews on arrival, eventually developing into a fan favorite and essential listen from the era. With Payne producing all the record's material, we really need to pose a question. Why was this man so underrated? If you asked us why I Got It and Suicide made the final cut, we just scratch our heads and shrug our shoulders. It felt like Payne had submitted a finished product and the label sent it back, telling him an hour-long project would sell better. We're also not sure why Put It Down would see Payne featuring his alter egos Teddy Versetti and Teddy Pendergrass Down. 13 years later, his most consumed solo content is still Bartender and Buy You a Drink. If that's not a successful formula, we don't know what is. Alright theorists, that's another one in the books. If you learned anything, be sure to like this video, subscribe, and smash that super thanks so we can keep the rankings rolling in. QB signing off and inviting you to tap in with us next time.